We live in a culture that romanticizes helplessness under the glossy, marketable banner of interdependence. We are told that needing others is the ultimate proof of human connection, that calling someone to change a light bulb or tighten a loose door hinge is a cute testament to romance or community. But let us strip away the comforting lies we tell ourselves over dinner table conversations and text messages. Most of the time, leaning on someone else isn't about fostering deep emotional bonds. It is an outsourced competence, a lazy surrender of our own autonomy disguised as affection. We rent out our basic survival skills to landlords, handymen, and partners because it is easier to play the victim of a minor mechanical inconvenience than to spend 20 minutes holding a screwdriver and facing our own inadequacy. We treat everyday maintenance like a biological crisis, dialing emergency contacts for things that require nothing more than a pair of pliers and a flicker of common sense. Consider the standard narrative of a broken household item. A fuse blows in the hallway, plunging the corner of the apartment into a dull, flat gray. The immediate, conditioned reflex is not to grab the stepladder and a spare bulb. No, the instinct is to sigh loudly, fold your hands, and wait for someone else to walk through the door and fix your microworld for you. We weaponize our own incompetence, turning minor inconveniences into loyalty tests. If they truly cared, they would notice the darkness and climb up there. If they loved us, they would know how to silence that dripping faucet without being asked. We weave an elaborate psychological web where our inability to handle a simple wrench becomes a metric for emotional intimacy. It is a pathetic transaction. We trade our self-reliance for a cheap hit of validation, convincing ourselves that someone else's labor is proof of their devotion. Meanwhile, the apartment gathers dust, the lock remains jammed, and we sit in the dim light of our own manufactured helplessness, waiting for a savior to rescue us from a problem we are entirely capable of solving ourselves. Then comes the day when nobody shows up. The phone sits on the counter, silent and unresponsive. The door lock sticks, refusing to turn, leaving you locked out or trapped inside your own private fortress. There is no one to call, no convenient contractor on speed dial, no partner to hand the flashlight to while they do the real work. That is the exact moment the comfortable illusion collapses under its own weight. The silence in the room is heavy, suffocating, and terrifying, not because you are alone in the universe, but because you are suddenly forced to realize just how thoroughly you have disabled yourself. You look at the jammed lock with sheer panic, realizing that every time you said "I can't do this," you were actually practicing how to be helpless. The loneliness you feel in that second is not the absence of another human being, it is the terrifying void of your own absence from your own life. You have spent so long outsourcing your competence that when you finally need yourself, nobody is home. Panic gives way to stubborn irritation, and irritation finally boils over into desperation. You do not have a choice anymore. You walk to the toolbox that has been gathering cobwebs in the back of the closet, pull out a dusty screwdriver, and kneel down in front of the stubborn lock. Your hands are clumsy. The metal is cold. You strip a screw on the first try and mutter a curse into the empty room. But you keep going. You look up a 10-second tutorial on a cracked phone screen, squinting at the tiny gears and springs that you always assumed were rocket science. You turn the mechanism clockwise. There is a sharp, metallic click, the sound of friction giving way to alignment. The bolt slides smoothly into place. You stand up, wipe the grease from your palms onto your jeans, and look at the door. It works. You did that. No applause, no validation text, no romantic background music. Just pure, unadulterated mechanics executed by your own two hands. A strange, quiet shift occurs in the chest right after that moment. The hollow ache of loneliness that usually fills the room at dusk doesn't creep in. It has nowhere to go, because the space it used to occupy is now entirely filled by a sudden, jarring surge of self-reliance. You realize with startling clarity that the loneliness you spent years whining about was never about an empty bed or a quiet apartment. It was the crushing emptiness of a person who refused to inhabit their own physical existence. You were lonely because you were a ghost in your own home, haunting the margins of your life while waiting for someone else to turn on the lights. When you finally fix the things you used to cry about, the illusion shatters. You do not need a rescuer. You needed to stop treating yourself like a permanent emergency. The bitter truth is that dependency is just fear wearing a polite mask, and autonomy is the only cure for the quiet desperation of living a life supervised by others. You spent years waiting for someone to save you from the dark, only to realize you were the one holding the light switch all along.